All right. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Coach Corner here on the NAI Women's Volleyball page. I'm Daniel Mosquito, and I'm here with Coach Micah Rhodes, who's now the head coach at Midland University out in Fremont, Nebraska. Um, Coach Rhodes' coaching journey has taken him all levels of women's volleyball, from UNO, Bellevue, Creighton, and where he served as the director of operations. He joined Midland in 2023 as a volunteer assistant. And after that first year, he was elevated to full-time assistant. And now, most recently, he stepped into the head coaching role here at Midland University. Coach, thanks for joining us. That was a little bit about you, but how's your summer going?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. First, I want to say thank you to, creating this platform for NAI volleyball to share experiences and our successes and just really kind of put us more on the map. I think that's awesome. So again, kudos to you for taking the charge on this. Summer's going great. It's going by a little too quickly, if I had to say so myself. I can't believe we're already in the middle of July, but it's been a good balance between, open gyms with our players and really kind of getting our new players acclimated to the college level, summer camps. And then I do fortunately have a lake cabin up in Northwest Iowa. So I've been able to take a couple of trips up there to kind of get some rest and relaxation before preseason hits in August.
Nice, nice. That's great to hear. But you've been a part of the program for some time. But now that you're at the helm, what are some of the biggest, shift or adjustments that you've dealt with so far?
Yeah, I think honestly, the biggest adjustment for me has just been trusting in myself, my knowledge, my experiences, my intuition, to make decisions for this program. I've been an assistant coach for 12 years, and there was rarely a time where I didn't have to at least run an idea by my head coach or get some sort of approval. At the end of the day, I always had someone who either affirmed or rejected my ideas. And now I don't have that buffer. I am the top. And so it's definitely taken a mentality shift for me and trusting that I don't need someone else's approval to know that I'm making the best decision for the program. So I think that's just been a little bit of the biggest adjustment mentally.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now that you're at the helm, you're running the ship. But like I said, you've coached across nearly every level of volleyball, from operations at Creighton to assistant roles at UNO, Buena Vista, and Bellevue. But last season, when you were the assistant, you were named GPAC Assistant of the Year, which is a great reflection of you, and it's a good accolade to get, especially in a competitive program like the Great Plains.
Thank
But
you.
like I said, you've been a part of the program for a while, but when this head coaching job opened up, what said to you that you were ready to step on and take this role?
Yeah, well, it's kind of crazy to think about how fast things certainly snowballed in the progression that you mentioned earlier. And I'm humbled by that. Not many people get the opportunity to transition so quickly. And I would not be where I am today if it weren't for the belief that Paul Gieselman, the former head coach, had in me to be his successor and to lead such a prominent and national caliber program such as Midland. But in answer to your question, I tell my players all the time to trust their training. So in that same sense, I'm trusting my own training. I've been doing this for over a decade now, and I've been fortunate enough to work for the best coaches in Nebraska and some of the best across the entire country, if I'm being honest. So I felt confident and prepared that I was ready to take on this program and step into the head coaching role.
For sure. And now that you're leading the program, what have you been focusing as you start putting your stamp on the program?
Yeah, I think it's first important to note just my mentality shift in reaching the pinnacle of what coaching is or what I thought coaching was. So, when I first got into college coaching, my only past experience was working with Nebraska. So that's kind of where my mind was always at, was that is the pinnacle. I mean, Nebraska is clearly one of the best Division I programs in the country. And so I kind of just thought that that was what I wanted to aspire to. And so, Buena Vista was a great stepping stone, a small D3 school in Northwest Iowa that led me to opportunities at the Division I level at both Creighton and UNO. And so, when I became the full-time assistant at UNO, I was like, oh my gosh, I've achieved my goal. This is what I've wanted. This is what
Mhm.
I've worked towards. And then Rose Shires was the head coach at UNO at the time. And she'd been there for 30 years and she announced her retirement after a really illustrious career. And as is common in the coaching world, the new head coach wanted to bring in his own people. So unfortunately, I was let go from UNO. And so that kind of knocked me back a few pegs. My ego was a little bit bruised. I was kind of like, what do I do now? And thought that I wanted to rework my way up to getting another Division I job. But once I got into NAI volleyball into Midland, which I didn't really have any knowledge of what NAI volleyball was, you know. I mean, there's clearly a lot of great programs in this area with College of St. Mary, Concordia, Doane, obviously Midland. So I knew kind of about them, but I didn't really know what it was. So I think once I got into NAI and I understood how good the level was, that really just made me see that I don't have to be a Division I coach to be a part of a great program and to be able to make an impact in student athletes' lives and to be able to have ultimate success. So I think it's important just to kind of talk about that mentality shift. You know, all of my past experiences have really kind of molded me into the coach that I am. So, you know, as a student manager and a practice player at Nebraska, I learned so much about the technical side of the game. Coach Cook is one of the best coaches in terms of X's and O's behind what they're doing, how they're doing it, when they're doing it. There was purpose behind everything that they were doing, from the warm up to the cool down and everything in between. So definitely learned a lot about the technical side and just the strategic side. You know, when I was at Creighton, Kirsten really helped me and taught me how to develop and maintain a positive culture while always keeping in mind to do things the right way 100% of the time and to never compromise your integrity or your values. But also surround yourself with other coaches, other support staff, and players who really share in those same visions and goals for what a program is. And then at both Buena Vista, which I mentioned is a smaller D3 school, and then Nebraska Omaha, I really learned a lot about recruiting. You know, different levels of talent, certainly between D1 and D3, but they were the same in the sense that I was the underdog. You know, neither BV or Omaha was at the top of their league or at their conference when I came into the picture. And in fact, Buena Vista was the worst team in their conference. They had kind of been the bottom dweller for a while. So and I had no idea how to recruit. I was a 23-year-old kid who had only worked with Nebraska and only knew that mentality. So I
Mhm.
really just had, but what I did know was how to relate to players and how to connect with people. So what I really made sure that I kept in mind was how can I figure out what each individual person wants or needs from our program, from the university. And I'm going to really sell that hard while continuing to focus on building relationships and connecting with people on a deeper, more personal level.
For sure, your journey is very great because you've been a part of all facets of the program from Division I to Division III, so you've seen it all. But going into your first year, what is your culture or identity going to be going into a great league or conference like the GPAC? What are you trying to let the coaches know in your first year?
Yeah, well, I think my biggest focus for the program so far has been really diving more into the mental side of the game, both from a mental health aspect, but also just being stronger mentally to handle pressure and stressful situations. So I think it helps that I'm still relatively closer to this generation than
Mhm.
previous generations. And so, you know, I have a presence on social media. I know that the impact that social media can have on our players in terms of how they should look, how they should act, what they should do, what their definition of success should be based on people that they don't know, but only see the best sides of on social media. And so I think that can really take a toll on my student athletes. And I also have a lot of players that are perfectionists, you know, and I think that's great to an extent. I think it's great to have high standards, have high expectations, to really want the best for you. But I think the part that they miss or don't know as much about how to handle is giving themselves grace and being able to understand that it's a process. You're going to fail more often than you succeed. And you have to trust the process, and you have to be able to reset quickly and have a next ball mentality. So I'm really excited. We brought in Dr. Larry Widman, who is a sports psychologist and an elite mindset performance coach who has worked with Nebraska, has worked with Creighton. He's even stepped outside the realm of volleyball in terms of he's worked with LSU beach volleyball, Florida gymnastics. He's worked with the Supernovas. So I just think his wealth of knowledge and experiences is going to be very invaluable to our team. So that's kind of been my biggest focus, more so than anything, is just really locking into the mental side of the game and really also developing deeper relationships within our team. Our culture is great. I'm not saying that it needs to be fixed, but I definitely think that it can be enhanced to take us to that next level and achieve our goal of winning a national championship, which is something that we don't shy away from talking about in this program.
For sure, battling for the red banner is something that everybody's looking forward to, and I think it's very important. You talked about mental health, and I think that's something that some coaches, overlook sometimes. They want to look at the physical part, but I think the mental health is a good part to dig into, and it helps athletes push them over that bump. Like you said, you don't need a full makeover of Midland volleyball, but that mental health could be that one little inkling that you need to push you deeper into Sioux City. But we talked a little bit about your identity, culture, your journey. But let's talk about returners and some of the team outlooks. Looking at your roster, you got some strong returners coming back, including first team all conference and freshman of the year, Brooklyn Schneider. But what are some of the other players that you expect to take some key leadership roles this fall?
Yeah, I mean, speaking about Brooklyn, she had a phenomenal freshman year. And I don't necessarily think that we were expecting that, but we're very fortunate that she did have the success that she had.
Hmm.
Um, and, I think before I even go into specific players, one of the things that I'm also trying to instill in this group is that everyone has leadership qualities. Everyone has the ability to speak their mind, voice their opinions, regardless of if you're a senior or a freshman on our first team or on our second team. You should feel comfortable expressing that opinion and being able to talk amongst your peers without judgment or fear of them not taking it the right way. So that's something I'm really trying to work on, but I'm also not naive to the fact that naturally certain individuals kind of emerge above everybody else as leaders, and as the overall voice of the team. So, going back to Brooklyn,
Hmm.
based on what she did for us last fall and what I've seen from her this spring and this summer and her ability to impact every part of the game, I would love for her to be able to step into that leadership role. I mean, obviously, she is a leader in terms of what she does on the court and she leads by example. But what I really challenged her to do at the beginning of spring ball is to lead more with her voice and to step outside of her comfort zone. It can be hard for a freshman to do that, but she's not a freshman anymore.
Hmm.
And she's a key impact player for our team. So I really just challenged her to do that. And I've seen a lot of growth from her and her really taking that to heart and trying to take her game to the next level in other areas than just on court. Brenna Mackling is another player that I think is probably going to be one of our leaders. She's going into her third year as one of our setters. She just has a really calming presence on the court. I think she has some natural leadership abilities where people just tend to gravitate towards her and people listen when she talks. And she's also really been dedicated on the court, and I think that also shows great leadership. She knows the areas that she's needed to improve on, and she's really taken that to heart, like I mentioned. And I give that credit to my new assistant coach, Lindsay Smith, who was a former All-American setter at the University of Nebraska Kearney, which is a traditional D2 powerhouse school. So she's another player that I think will be a leader. And then someone that's kind of emerged a little bit that I wasn't necessarily expecting, and full kind of started to blossom into her own is Lauren Williams. And she's known as Lefty on our team because she's left-handed. But she's been in our starting lineup on and off for the past 3 years, but just struggled with consistency to an extent. And so this spring, it felt kind of like a weight was off of her shoulders and she could really just be herself. And so it's been fun to see her come into her own on the court, but I'm also seeing her really take some of our incomers under her wing and really try and lead with her voice as well.
For sure. We talked about leadership roles, a lot of the tangibles, a lot of those that you expect to, come forward and be a leader. But what are some of the players that have brought a spark to the gym that you don't really see on the stat sheet that are that nobody really looks at?
The first person that comes to mind is a young lady by the name of Emily Shepard. She's going to be a junior defensive specialist. She's from Fremont,
Mhm.
so she's grown up kind of around Midland. She bleeds blue and orange, and she's just the perfect example of being a servant leader, and that's something that we talk about a lot in our program as well as being able to serve others and make it about other people and not just about yourself. Again, kind of going back to what I said about social media, I just think there's so much today about instant gratification. And if I'm not happy right away, then I'm going to move on. And she's just the perfect example of putting her nose down to the grind, working hard, not always getting the payoff. She's been the starting libero on the second team for 2 years, but it's been more of a serving specialist on the starting team. But she comes in with the same mentality every day. She works hard. She gives her best effort. She's encouraging. She's loud. And so she's definitely that spark plug that doesn't necessarily get rewarded when it comes to accolades or stats, but is absolutely invaluable to our program success. Um, And another person that kind of stands out is Abby Spital. She's going to be a senior again, has played as a middle on the second team, hasn't really had opportunities on the first team, but she works her butt off every single day. And she is the Energizer Bunny and will be in every single drill and not take a break if you let her. So those are just some people that, again, really bring to light what it means to be in the Midland program in terms of just giving your all, regardless of what it means for you personally.
For sure, a lot of great culture there at Midland is from what I've heard and what I've witnessed being a part of the GPAC for some time. But let's talk a little bit about the 2025 slate. You know, you guys start the season off with a Missouri Baptist Invitational, and you'll face some tough and strong competition. Do you see these as early tests that to see where your team is and where you guys need to be, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, there's nothing like having a mini national tournament to start off the year, right? We're
No doubt.
bookending it. But yeah, we play Viterbo, Missouri Baptist, Corbin, and St. Thomas, and those opponents won a combined 113 and 30 last season. So not easy matches to start off, and they all four finished in the top 20. You know, Corbin made the semis, St. Thomas made the quarterfinals, Viterbo and Mobat made the final site. So that's kind of just become the standard, though, here at Midland, is we schedule really tough. The GPAC is traditionally a strong conference, so some coaches tend to shy away from scheduling tough out of conference, but, you know, we traditionally have a top five non-conference schedule, and I think the reason for that is because we're not playing for August and September. And we talk about that a lot with our players and our recruits is, you know, we're playing these matches to prepare us for what postseason is going to be like. So do we want to win all those games? Absolutely. We're competitors. We want to win, but we also are not going to, you know, ring the alarm if we don't and say, oh my gosh, our season is going to not be successful if we don't. But we're going to take the lumps. We're going to learn from them, whether we get knocked or whether we knock. And I think it's going to prepare us for the postseason. And just one little nugget that I want to share: since Coach G took over the program in 2010, they made the national tournament for the first time as a program in 2013 and made it to the quarterfinals. And since 2013, we have the second most wins at the national tournament at the final site of any program in NAIA history, second to Park. And they're clearly a very good program. So
Mhm.
I think that's something that we like to hang our hat on. But again, it's because we schedule such tough non-conference opponents. So when we get to Sioux City, we're prepared. We're not as stressed out. It's obviously a stressful situation, but we've been in those moments before. So we know how to perform better under the lights when it matters and when it's a win or go home situation.
For sure, you guys will be battle tested. A lot of rich history from what I hear at Midland. A lot of winning. That's phenomenal and great to hear. But beyond the invite, because that's right out of the gate. Are there any matchups or stretches down the season that you know you're looking forward as a coach or just as some fans should be looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, the CSM Labor Day Classic is a great tournament that we go to. We're going to play four really solid opponents that were all, you know, in the top 40 range. So that'll be really fun. And another tough tournament that we're going to be tested right away before we get into GPAC play. But honestly, I'm excited for the GPAC. I think there's just a different mentality when you get into conference play, and there's a little bit more on the line. And so I'm excited for that entire slate. And something that I learned from Kirsten when I was at Creighton was, you know, you have to treat every match like it's a championship match. You can't overlook any opponent. And I definitely think that the GPAC is one of those conferences where if you don't bring your best game that night or your best mentality, your best focus, you could get beat, and that can affect where we're at further down the road in November and December. So really just want to make sure that our players don't overlook any opponent and really just take the match at hand as the biggest moment currently in our season. But yeah, the GPAC should be fun this year.
That's great to you know the GPAC so strong. You hear there's a lot of talent and anybody could win on any given night. It just who decides to come out. But let's talk a little bit about player development. You touched on in the beginning about mental health and how that's pretty big for you as a coach and what you've been around in your coaching journey. But what are some other areas that you emphasize, whether it's technical, mental, or even leadership wise?
Yeah, one thing just to kind of give a little bit more perspective as to who I am as a coach. I'm very process oriented, and I think that comes from my time at Nebraska. You know, I was never a coach at Nebraska, but I was in the gym every single day, shagging balls, hitting balls when necessary. So I gleaned and learned a lot of things. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is you have to teach the parts before the whole. I'm an
Mhm.
advocate and I'm a believer that, the game teaches the game ultimately, from an IQ standpoint, a savviness standpoint. But if you don't have a really solid fundamental base of your skills, you're not going to be able to perform at the highest level, and achieve the goals that we want to achieve. So I really like to break skills down and explain the why behind what we're doing. Because I feel like the more they understand that, it's going to be easier for it to transfer in their head and then transfer to the court. So that's just something about me, that I really like to make sure that my players know is we're going to work on things individually and then we're going to put it together in 6-on-6 while keeping those individual focuses as our focus of 6-on-6. But I'm really big on cross training, multi-skill training. I want my liberos and setters to be able to give a good aggressive down ball and be confident if they need to. I want my middles to be able to pass the ball confidently or turn and set a fast ball coming towards the net. So obviously we're very specialized and NAI allows for that with unlimited subs to really put people in specific positions, that they're good at. But I also want everybody to be good at everything. And so that's just something that we really try and emphasize in our gym.
Mhm.
But in terms of specific skills, serve and pass, I don't think you can ever do enough with first contact. And it's cliche, but if you're taking teams out of system and if you're in system more often than not, you're putting yourself in a position to win a lot of games. So we really put a lot of emphasis on those skills. And then we've been a very successful blocking team. So 2 years ago, we were second nationally in blocks per set. And this past year, we were fourth in the nation in blocks per set. So that's another skill that I personally love to train. And I think that our players have really, taken in stride and elevated our overall level of play.
No doubt, not only a lot of winning, but a lot of record breaking and record holding there at Midland, and that's great to hear. And touching on that, let's talk about recruiting a little bit. For families tuning in or recruits that are just interested in Midland or like, oh, Midland, I've never heard of them, or like you said, you didn't know much about NAI volleyball before you jumped into it. How would you describe an experience of a student athlete at Midland?
Well, if I had to use one word, I would use supportive. I think the Fremont community, Midland specifically, from an academic standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, you are going to have people that are in your court, that are on your team, that want you to succeed and are going to support, your goals and your visions for what you want to achieve during your time in college, but also post college. And so I think that's, something that I've really liked being a part of Midland is just knowing that I have constant support from multiple people, across campus. But just a couple of things specifically, Midland Volleyball is one of the best, consistently successful programs here at Midland. And so, my athletes are highly visible. They're recognized across campus, but also out in the community. So if my players are at Hy-Vee or Chipotle or Walmart or wherever, they're probably going to run into somebody who knows that they're a volleyball player and is going to want to stop and chat to them about the season or the game before, the night before, or whatever. So I think it's kind of fun for them to be mini celebrities here in Fremont, if you want to say.
Mhm.
But you're on a team where you're consistently competing and succeeding at a national level, which we've already talked about. We talked about the culture and developing deeper relationships. You're part of a tight knit family of warriors. And then I think the last thing is going along with the supportive aspect is you're well prepared for your future. So we really take our academics to heart. We had a 3.75 cumulative GPA across both semesters this year, which I think is outstanding and really shows the dedication and determination my, athletes have to being successful in the classroom. But our academic advisors, our faculty, our professors, they want our players to be successful. And they're going to be mentors and resources for them as they go out into the real world and try and get a job shadow or a job internship or something of that nature. So we're going to prepare you for, what it's like to be a college athlete and a college student, but also help prepare you for the real world. Because that's ultimately my job as the head coach is to help develop them holistically.
For sure, you talk about the experience, but let's talk about getting to that experience. As a head coach, you're out there recruiting. What player fits well in your system, or what are you looking for when you're building your future classes?
Yeah, well, when it comes to intangibles, as far as on-court stuff goes, I think athleticism and versatility are really the biggest things that I look for. So those aren't even necessarily volleyball related, but it's really what I look for. When I talk to recruits on the phone or when I bring them on campus for a visit, I talk to them about I can make you a better volleyball player. I can give you the skills, the techniques, the training to elevate your level of play. But I can't necessarily teach you how to be a better athlete. I feel like that's something you just either have or don't have. So I want people that can come in who might be a little bit raw, but really show athleticism, height above the net, the ability to move quickly, things of that nature. So again, that's one of the things that I look for when it comes to versatility. I want players who don't fit themselves into a box or limit themselves in terms of what they think they're capable of doing or what position they can or cannot do. For context, one of my incoming players during her prep career was an outside hitter, a right side hitter, a center, a defensive specialist out of middle back, and she played libero out of left back. Another was started as a setter that was on a state tournament team and then transitioned to libero when it was all conference. And then yet another one was an outside hitter for a high school team and made it to the state championship match, but excelled really well in the middle for her club team. So again, that's exciting for me as a coach to have athletes who can do multiple things. And it's the best case scenario for me personally to have an athlete that's kind of a multifaceted puzzle piece. And I feel like I can put them in a lot of different spots to maximize their abilities and their potential, but also maximize the overall team's ability as well. And then, when it comes to off court things, I look for players who can enhance our culture. I've talked about that a lot on this interview, but in the same sense of I can't train you how to be an athlete necessarily, I can't teach you how to be a good person or to have good character, to treat people with respect. So if you're going to be a part of our program, you are going to live up to the values and the standards and the expectations that we have within our program. And I want people who embrace that we before me mentality, who support and cheer on their teammates if they're the ones that are getting individual accolades over themselves. And so I think that ultimately is what's going to make us the most successful team. So those are the things I look for.
That's some great insight, Coach. It's very important, especially like you talked about unlimited subs. So you got to be cross-trained to be at Midland, but it's also a good program to be at. But Coach, thanks for being a part of the show. We're looking forward to watching your journey as you enter your first year, not in the coaching realm, but as a head coach. But before we wrap up, where can we find Midland Volleyball? Time to plug in your socials. Let them know where we can find you guys.
Yeah, before I do that, just again, Danny, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you reaching out to me, allowing me to kind of share a little bit more about myself and my program. But I just think it's really cool what you're doing for NAI volleyball. And I hope that this continues to grow and become an even bigger and better thing. So thank you. As far as, following us, I would love for people that are watching to support us and kind of see who we're all about and what we're all about. So our Instagram and Twitter handles are Midland_VBall, so VBALL, Midland University Volleyball on Facebook. But then what I think is really cool is this spring, the GPAC implemented the GPAC Network, which is a free streaming service where you can watch any of our upcoming or past matches. So if you want to see us play, that's the best option for you to see our matches.
For sure. Well, that wraps up episode 2 of the Coach's Corner here on the NAI Women's Volleyball page. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what coaches you'd like to be or what coaches you want on this channel. But Coach, thanks for joining us once again, and we'll see you next time on the Coach's Corner.